Bonne Foi, Chapter 10. I was still in bed with her. It was past 3 in the morning, and Bella had been asleep for over 2 hours, but I was still lying there with her. She was plastered onto me like a starfish, and I was bored. But it was kind of nice. She was so warm and soft. It was one of those rare physical comforts I could appreciate as a vampire, the warmth. I was reluctant to leave it. The boredom wasn't bad either. The idleness was sort of refreshing. Vampire bodies never tired, and rest wasn't necessary. Not to mention useless, but sometimes it felt as if it would be nice to sleep anyway, just to give my mind a break. That's sort of what it was like, being with her like this, a mental break. Okay, so this was absurd, I knew that. I was made to kill humans, not to let them use me as a full-body pillow. But why shouldn't I enjoy this? She is warm. It was a pleasant sensation. Where was it written that I couldn't soak up this little human's body heat while she slept? I was a vampire, wasn't I? I lived outside of rules and boundaries. I could do whatever I wanted. Bella's soft voice caught my attention as she murmured my name in her sleep. That was the whole other issue. She was obviously very attached to me already. What if she started to want more? It was crucial that I kept her at a distance. She was already too close, really. Letting her within such constant physical proximity was bad enough. The more time she spent with me, the more chances she would have to realize I was not human. She really should have had suspicions already. What if she had, but hadn't said anything to me? I had no way of knowing what she was thinking. I didn't care, I decided. I wanted this human, and I would have her. Rules be damned. If she ever figured it out, well, deal with that when the time came. Edward, she sighed again, nuzzling my chest this time. The little stream of air tickled my skin with her every exhalation. I played with her silky hair, letting it slip between my fingers. Yes, all these little sensations were pleasant. I might as well enjoy them. After another hour, I decided it was time to have something to occupy my mind again, and I went to get a book from the living room. Bella had whined in her sleep as I extricated myself from her hold. What had I left to read? Of course I knew exactly which books on my shelf were untouched, but that didn't help me decide which I wanted to take up next. None of them, really. I sighed to myself. Maybe I should reread like Bella said. Would I really find anything new? It seemed unlikely, but I was curious. Camus, then. Maybe I would discover she was wrong about the stranger after all. I looked at my leather couch. Normally, I would do my reading there, but perhaps I should take the book back to bed. You want to, I told myself, so do it. In the end, I settled down next to Bella. She plastered herself right onto me again like a needy child. It was funny, really, when it wasn't frightening. What was going on in her subconscious that made her cling to me in her sleep? I read for a while in the darkness. Light was an indulgence, not a necessity for me. The text was somewhat uncomfortable. I had read the novel the first time with a certain amount of contempt for Marisol. He had always seemed to me rather pathetic, going along with whatever was expected of him. Even though he didn't care, he was a coward. Sure, he behaved in ways that were against the rules of society, but he didn't have the courage to truly be different. Now I was finding startling similarities between my own behavior and Marisol's. What was I doing here, playing human for the girl? I should stop. It was just as pathetic as this fictional character was. But I didn't want to. Maybe I was just fulfilling my needs like Marisol, but unlike him, I couldn't use just any woman. I had a reason for catering to Bella. Her silent mind was extremely valuable to me. I simply couldn't enjoy myself with anyone else. It was logical for me To work to keep her, I decided. I read on, but my mind was distracted, trying to emphasize the differences between me and the character I despised. Soon enough, Bella began to stir, and I set my book aside. Her leg was thrown across mine, and as she woke, her soft thigh rubbed against me. I caught the faintest whiff of arousal then, and I smiled. Yes. She woke slowly, rubbing her little body against mine in the process. Finally, her eyelids fluttered open, and she gave a feline stretch before she looked at my face and blushed to find me watching. "Morning," she mumbled. "Good morning," I replied pleasantly. My fingers were drawn to the temptation of her bare thigh. Such lovely skin. "I sleep really well with you," she sighed contentedly. "Did you sleep well?" "I had a good night," I evaded. She propped herself up on her elbow and caught sight of the book on the nightstand. "You're rereading The Stranger? Any new conclusions?" I shrugged. "I think Marisol has no idea what he wanted." "I think you're right," Bella agreed. "What about you? Do you know what you want?" she challenged. "I know what I want right now," I said, before suddenly flipping her onto her back and wedging myself between her legs. She laughed her excitement, and the sound caused little darts of pleasure down my spine. "What time is your first class?" I asked, already searching under my t-shirt for her soft breasts. There they were, her nipples stiffened under my palms. 9:30, she gasped. "Good," I growled. "Several hours, then. Plenty of time to play." After a leisurely morning in bed, I took Bella back to her dorm to shower and change. I went back to my place and did the same thing before heading out to class. Biology again. I was growing tired of the routine already. If I'd known I'd be playing human, I would have enrolled in better courses. I continued my rereading of Camus between classes. The more I read, the more I decided there was a distinct difference between me and Marisol. Marisol simply didn't care. He acted without motivation, without reason. That was certainly not me. My reasons were my own, and I was doing what I wanted. Bella turned up to class in jeans today. I was only a little disappointed. I suppose she couldn't wear skirts every day, and it was cooler today than it had been on Monday. "Hi," she grinned, sliding into her seat next to mine as usual. "Hello." I looked her over. She was in jeans, but her long-sleeved shirt was made of a clingy material that hugged her frame. There were beat-up Chuck Taylors on her feet. I laughed a little. She was obviously an indifferent dresser, but it worked for her. "I was thinking," she started tentatively. "My classes start later tomorrow, and I've got my work done for them, so I'll have a little more free time tonight if you wanted to, spend some time together." I chuckled at her rambling. "Why don't I pick you up from work tonight?" "Okay," she grinned, and I imagined this was exactly the outcome she'd hoped for. "My shift ends at 9. 9 it is," I agreed, just as the professor walked in to start class. The lecture only held about half my attention. The unoccupied part of my brain fell to daydreaming. I was immersed in my favorite Bella skirt desk fantasy, now flavored with flashbacks of her bent over my piano when she pushed a scrap of paper onto my desk. "Still working on Camus?" I held back a laugh. Only a girl like Bella would pick existentialist literature as a good topic for note-passing in class. "Almost finished," I wrote back. I was very much tempted to change the subject to her panties, but I refrained. "What do you think?" she wanted to know. What was the deal with this girl in interrogating me about my reading? Must be an English major thing. Maybe it was her way of flirting or something. Seems rather pointless that Marisol continually refused to follow society's expectations without using that power to do anything he really wanted to do. By the time he's figured out he only has one life to live, He's stuck in prison and can't do anything with that life. The freedom he supposedly finds in his own insignificance seems a bit empty. Bella read my answer with a thoughtful frown. I've always felt that way too. Camus frustrates me. He seems to think that the absence of a deeper meaning to human life is an absence of all meaning, but we have the power to create meaning, don't you think? Create meaning in this world? I'd seen a lot of shallow, empty lives. Even the pursuits that were supposed to be so meaningful often left people feeling unfulfilled. You make it sound so easy. She smiled to herself. Of course it isn't easy, but I think there are things worth living for. I couldn't resist. Like what? She bit her lip as she wrote her response, her pen practically flying in her enthusiasm. Like science and art? Working to improve others' lives, love, passion? Aren't those good enough reasons? I had never seen those things become good enough reasons. Maybe they are, but it seems to me that most people don't really catch on to what you're saying. Bella chuckled as she read that. They just haven't read Sartre. He makes it simple. Plus, people are lazy. They expect everything to fall right into their laps. You have to make your life what you want it to be. It was so clear for her, I realized. She knew just who she was and what she wanted. And I envied her. That's what this was. I envied her naive innocence, her easy belief. I have to see what Sartre is all about then. I had nothing better to do, so I decided to go early to see Bella, 2 hours early, but I had said I would visit her at work, and I should really check up on her little admirer and make sure he wasn't crossing any boundaries working with her. She was too nice for her own good. She probably wouldn't tell him to back off if she needed to. I would definitely have to keep an eye on that kid. With a book in hand to keep me entertained, I drove down to the coffee shop. Bella's scent jumped out at me, even amidst the overpowering reek of coffee. I think I'd know that scent anywhere. She was behind the counter, carefully mixing one of the bizarre concoctions humans chose to drink. It made me rather glad for my uncomplicated diet. There was blood and nothing else. Simple. The boy was there, standing too close to her, instructing her on how to make the mocha frappa something or other. I made a quick scan of the minds in the room, several customers, but the lewd-minded manager girl wasn't there, thankfully. That was one less thing to deal with. Bella was passing the drink to the impatiently waiting woman at the counter when she caught sight of me. She smiled brightly and nearly tipped over the cup, but she caught herself quickly. I strode across the room while the unhappy customer was mentally complaining about Bella's stupidity. I shook my head to myself. If this woman knew her at all, she wouldn't dare call Bella stupid. "What are you doing here so early?" Bella asked, now free for a moment. The boy was very unhappy now, having Bella's attention diverted away from him. I shrugged. "Well, I promised to visit you at work. I thought I would hang out here until you were done." "Really?" She was pleased. "You just made my night so much better." "Did I now? God, what a jerk. Why do guys like that always get the best girls?" She grinned. "Definitely. Do you want something? I can almost make a cup of coffee by myself." I laughed. "No thanks. Caffeine does a number on me." I lied easily. "Me too," she said. "So the free coffee I get working here is wasted on me." The boy stepped up behind Bella and cleared his throat. "Hey, Bells, there are customers waiting." Bells? What kind of horrid nickname was that? I shuddered. A glance behind me confirmed that there was in fact a single person waiting behind me. I rolled my eyes. "I'll be over there," I said to Bella, indicating an empty corner. With a jerk of my head, she smiled and nodded. While Bella went on working, I pretended to read, but I was really keeping tabs on the boy working with her. He practically mooned over Bella in his thoughts. It was disgusting. She's so pretty, she's so smart, she's so funny, she has perfect tits. I was going to kill that little asshole, kill him and tear him to pieces so tiny they'd never be able to identify the body if he made one wrong move. I knew I should control my anger, lest I lose it and expose myself in front of all these humans, and Bella too. But his thoughts were loud, and I wasn't about to take my eye off him for 1 second, not when he was feet away from my Bella. He was teaching her to make another weird beverage now, something that had to be put through a blender, and then as he reached over her shoulder to show her which button to press, he very intentionally brushed his hand over her breast. His death would be slow and painful, I decided, already stalking across the small space to the counter. She was mine, 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 and the whole world should know it. This wouldn't be a problem with another vampire. My scent all over her would be enough to drive all others away. But evidently subtlety was beyond this weak-brained human, and I would have to blatantly mark her as my own. "Bella," I said, though my eyes were fixed in a glare at the very guilty-looking teenager, "do you have a break?" Yeah," she said, glancing between her coworker and me. "Why don't you take it now?" I suggested, turning persuasive eyes on her. She swallowed and nodded. "Yeah, sure, we're not busy," she agreed. She didn't ask whether he minded. A small triumph. She shed her apron and stepped out from behind the counter. I took her by the arm and led her down a hallway off to the side. "Is there somewhere we can be alone?" I asked her. Yeah, you mean you want to?" She was stammering and blushing, and it just made me want her more. "Yes, Bella, I want to fuck you right now. I want to take you hard and fast, and I want you to scream so loud that everyone in this place knows who you belong to." She was flushed from her forehead down to the collar of her shirt, and she was deeply, incredibly aroused. The scent overpowered everything else. "The storeroom has a lock," she told me, voice shaking. "Lead the way," I said, with a wave of my hand. Of course I could smell the storeroom easily, packed with coffee as it was, and I wasn't supposed to know its location. She took me to the end of the hallway and into the dark storeroom. It did indeed lock from the inside, and the keyhole on the outside. Ha! Maybe Bella's admirer would have the keys and walk in on us. That would serve him right. As soon as the door was shut and the lock was turned, I had her pressed against the wall. Her moan was muffled as I crushed my mouth to hers and began working on the button of her jeans. Bella's hands clutched weakly at my shoulders. "Take off your shoes," I told her. She complied. As I unfastened my pants and freed myself from my boxers, I waited impatiently for her to kick off both tennis shoes before I was under her again, shoving down her jeans and cotton panties. The scent of her desire drifted to me stronger than ever, and I was lost. I lifted her out of her pants, unable to wait for her to stumble her way free. In an instant, she was hitched against the back of the door, thighs around my waist, my cock brushed against her wet sex. Fuck yes. I slid into her easily with a gasp on her part. So tight, so wet, so mine. I really wanted to make her scream this time. "Edward," she groaned, writhing against me, grinding her hips against mine in eagerness. "Please, I want you so badly." I growled and drove my hips into hers again and again and again. I wanted to crawl inside her and possess her completely, wanted to tattoo my name into her flesh, wanted to consume her. "Tell me who you belong to," I panted, rapidly climbing toward climax. She was close too. I could feel her muscles fluttering around me. Soon they would be clenching, milking me. "You!" she gasped. "Say it again," I demanded. reaching down to graze a finger over her clit. "I belong to you," she cried, tossing her head back and revealing the tantalizing jugular to me. I focused my eyes on her bouncing breasts instead. "Say my name when you come, Bella. Scream it," she whimpered. "Oh God, I'm so close." I pushed into her harder, angling my hips to go as deep as possible. Her eyes went wide and her mouth dropped open. Oh God, Edward!" Yes, I groaned and grunted my climax as I came harder than I ever had before, burning up in Bella's searing heat. It seemed like hours passed before I felt able to function again, but it was probably only seconds. I pulled free of Bella and set her carefully on her feet. She wobbled and clung to me. "Damn," she breathed, and it felt like she was probably resting all her weight against me. "How am I supposed to go back to work now?" Easy. You're going to march down that hallway and go back to what you were doing, and everyone here will know exactly what, and who, for that matter, you did during your break." She blushed deeply. "You're diabolical, Edward. What brought this on, anyway?" "That little puppy dog you work with touched you inappropriately," I growled, giving her bum a little squeeze for emphasis. She snorted. "So you felt the need to mark your territory? Why don't you just pee on my leg next time? Might save you some effort." I laughed with her. "But this way is so much more enjoyable for both of us, don't you think?" "Maybe," she agreed reluctantly as she pulled up her pants. "But you better not make a habit of this every time some guy looks at me funny. I'll definitely get fired if my boyfriend drags me off to the storeroom all the time." "Oh, very well, if you insist," I sighed. I fastened myself up and she leaned on me for balance as she pulled her shoes back on. "I'm going to clean myself up in the restroom before I go back out there," she said, opening up the door. That was probably for the best. Her hips were swollen and her hair, well, her hair definitely said she'd probably been fucked. "All right. See you out there," I said, glad for the opportunity. There was something to be done first. Just as I suspected, the boy was waiting by the counter, exceedingly put out. I headed straight for him. He backed up a little at my approach, and I leaned over the counter, the better to scare the crap out of him. "Let me make something clear," I hissed. "You do not touch Bella. If you lay a hand, a fucking fingernail on her ever again, you will not like the consequences. Do you understand?" He nodded stiffly, and I could smell the fear. What a prick, he thought as I turned away. Possessive freak? But he was petrified. I smirked to myself. Fait accompli.